So the one mistake that I feel like a lot of us has been making in this season, because God did reveal to me that for many of us are walking into that crossover stage. But I feel like the one mistake that a lot of us are making in this season, and the one false perception that many of us have, perceived on how this crossover is about to go, was that many of us thought this crossover was about to be a cakewalk. Many of us thought it was lollipops, sunshines, and rainbows, and a lot of us thought we was about to cross over onto the other side. I don't know what that may look like for you, but a lot of us thought we was gonna cross over to the other side and it was gonna be cakewalk, like it was gonna be so easy. Not knowing that there's a big leap of faith that needs to occur during your crossover. Not knowing that there's a big test, there's a big trial, and it's almost like a video game. You know how during a video game you walk through all the other levels, but before you can actually complete the video game, you have to beat the final boss. Well, that goes for a lot of us in this crossover moment. I don't know what this crossover moment could be for you. It could be marriage, it could be restoration, it could be a new home. Heck, it don't even gotta be anything materialistic. A lot of people's crossover moments is gaining more clarity, gaining more wisdom, gaining deliverance from that thing that you have been having a stronghold over for, years. Where some of y'all crossover moments is actually coming back into reconciliation with God. But many of us walked into this season. We walked into this season with the false perception as if that this crossover was about to be so easy, and that we were about to easily walked into whatever, God had promised. Think about throughout the Bible, and especially think about in the Old Testament. You've had people like Moses, who was with the Israelites, and they were being chased by the Egyptians because they wanted, because they escaped slavery. And the one main big challenge they had before actually, getting over to the other side was crossing the Red Sea. Now, also think about Joshua. The other day, God had me in Joshua chapter 3, and it was talking about how Joshua was leading the Israelites, to cross over, the Jordan River to enter into their promised land. And before they could even, cross over to the Jordan, they ended up setting up camp by, the Jordan River, for about 3 days. And in those 3 days, if you go back and you read Joshua 1:11, God gave them 3 days and he prepared them for provision. He gave them the clarity. He gave them the wisdom. He gave them the insight. He allowed them, to prepare before they were about to get ready to cross over, and they were about to get ready to possess the land in which God had promised them. They were prepping themselves for the journey up ahead. So going back to Joshua 3, the people that was going on along the journey, you had Joshua, you had the Israelites, and you had priests. The priests, they held the Ark of the Covenant, which signified God's holy presence. It signified his character. And that Ark was to be 1,000, meters away from the children of God, because by them being far away from this covenant, it meant respect, it meant honor, and by it being so far away from them, it symbolized and signified them directly keeping their eyes on God while he directs their path into going on to the other side, because this had been a place where they have never known, and this had been a place where they were not familiar with. Hold on, I'm about to cook. So before they even crossed over, God had ended up speaking through Joshua, and he told them to sanctify themselves, consecrate themselves, meaning set themselves apart and be holy. Because if they did, God would do a miraculous wonder the next day, and that would be drying up, the Jordan River so that they could be able to walk past. So as we fast forward to them crossing over, first, the priests that were holding the Ark of the Covenant, they went first. But here's the catch. The time that they crossed over to the Jordan River, it was during the time of harvest. And during this time of harvest, the waters would stream very, very fast. They would, run very, very rapidly, to the point that if you was to try to walk across it, you would just, be swept away because of the fast coming streams of the river. But during the time of these fast water streams, God had ended up telling them to cross over. And I find it funny how God never told them that the water would still be streaming. All he told them was that he was going to end up drying it up. So I'm pretty sure they had this perceived notion, they had this perception. Like I was telling you guys, a lot of us have walked in, a lot of us has come into the season of crossover, we had this perception, think it was going to be a cakewalk. But I'm pretty sure a lot of them had that perceived notion, and they had that perception thinking like, okay, God's going to dry up the river before, we walk through it. No, God had told them while the water was still streaming, while the water was still running rampant, he was like, I need you to go take that big leap of faith, and I need you to walk into the river knowing that the water is still streaming. And I'm pretty sure it tested their faith. And no cap, I'm pretty sure that they was very, very fearful and very confused. But God needed them to take that leap of faith. And boy, when I tell y'all, as soon as they took that leap of faith, as the priests had dipped their feet into the water and they proceeded to go on, the waters of the river ended up drying up. And they sat there and they waited for everybody else to cross over so they could be able to, keep going ahead. And it happened that God had actually told the truth in everything that he promised them that he was going to do for them to be able to walk over, walk across, the river safely. And I wanted to explain this because I felt like the Lord was, speaking to me in my spirit yesterday. He was really telling me to really get this out to his people. Right now, many of you guys are in a crossover moment. Right now, many of you have had this perceived notion, and you came into the season, you walked into the season thinking that the crossover was going to be a cakewalk. Thinking that the crossover was about to be, like I said, ice cream, sunshine, and rainbow. But in the midst of you about to get ready to cross over, God has been having you fasting. He's been having you praying. He's been having you consecrating yourself, setting yourself apart. Because what God is trying to do is he's trying to give you the clarity. He's trying to give you the insight. He's trying to give you the plan. And although you may not know the whole entire plan in its whole entirety, God is still giving you enough so that you could be able to take that next step. And many of us, we struggle with this. If God does not give us all the full details, now we panicking and we don't want to move forward. But if God was to give you the full details, then it wouldn't be faith. If God was to give you the full details, then you wouldn't need to rely to trust on him. And the reason why many of you guys feel stagnant, the reason why you feel like many of you guys, everything is put to a halt, is because God is waiting for you to take that next leap of faith. God is saying, I have already dipped my feet in the water. I have already walked in the midst of the river. Now I just need you to walk over. I need you to cross over with me as well. I am in front of you. I am directing your path. I am directing every step in which I need for you to take. I'm the one orchestrating all of this. So if I'm the one orchestrating all of this, then why do you doubt? Why do you owe a little faith, have fear? And for many of you, most likely God has never given you the full detail. But God is saying, if you just take that leap of faith, if you just walk into that river, then I will be the one to get you across it safely. For many of us are holding back the things God wants to do for us and the thing God wants to do through us because we're afraid to cross over to the other side, because we're so comfortable, because we're so used to a certain thing, because what we're used to is so familiar. And now is leading us to get out of our comfort zone because now we're walking into something that we're not familiar with, and now it's testing our faith and it's making us really, really, really uncomfortable. But God is saying, if you're not uncomfortable, how are you going to be able to grow? If you can't trust me and follow my steps in this time, then how are you going to be able to follow me and trust in my voice when I really take you higher, when I really take you where I need to take you? Many of you guys are delaying your blessings. Many of you are delaying your clarity. Many of you are delaying your restoration. Many of you are delaying your reconciliation. Many of you are even delaying your deliverance because you're afraid to cross over, because you're afraid to step out your comfort zone. But just like Joshua in the Israelites, just like Moses in the Israelites, everything God had told him he was going to do, getting them across safely, going into the land and taking down all the enemies that were in the land that which they were supposed to possess, everything happened according to the way God had told them and the way God had said it. So don't be afraid and don't backtrack on what God has told you or what God has shown you in your own secret time. This is many of you guys' crossover moments. Allow the Lord to minister to you. Consecrate yourself. Do what you got to do fast. Pray, read, spend time in God's presence so that he can give you that wisdom, so he can give you that insight. And trust in the Lord's voice. For many of us, he's training our discernment, he's training our ears to be able to hear his voice more clearly, because in the next step, in the next place, and whatever God is doing for you, you're going to need to hear his voice, and you're going to need to be obedient. For many of you, quick obedience. No more delayed obedience. No more waiting on it in a couple months, or waiting on a couple weeks, or maybe waiting on a couple days. God's like, I need your yes now. But trust in his voice and get ready for your crossover moment. God bless you.